To the Committee of a Whole meeting of the Board of Education, Baltimore School District 161, Monday, October 26, 2015. Can we have a roll call, Ms. Sabrino?
Okay, Simmons.
Here.
Odom.
Here.
Carroll. Here. Marks. Present. Horace. Here. Huckabee. Here. Paredes.
Here, and quorum is present. First up, we have audience comments. Community members wishing to be heard by the board must sign in before commencing the meeting. Comments may be made by visitors at this time regarding items not on the agenda. And we have Scott Berg would like to address an issue of special education bus.
Do I go to the podium?
Yeah, if you could go to the podium.
Hello, everybody. Board of Education. The reason I'm here is because my son Zach is in the special ed program that is at Western Avenue. Originally, it was set up for Serena Hills, but the class sizes got to be too small, so they moved it to Western. Last year, the bus picked him up roughly 8 o'clock, and he had a great year. He loved school. The start of school year this year, I was told that the bus was going to pick him up at 7:20 for school that starts at 8:15. So at first, my wife and I thought maybe we just, see how he adjusted to it and, take it from there. And really that's what brings me here is, I made my concerns, after the first week of school, I started expressing my concerns to the director of special education. And primarily I would call and I would wait for a response. And she really wasn't getting anywhere. So then within a month of speaking with her, I was transferred over to the director of transportation. And after talking with her, I was basically told that it was impossible, that there's nothing really that could be done about it. Maybe they could push the time back, but not likely. So I've just seen the toll it's taken on my son. I just think it's a long time for kids to be on a bus, especially when it's roughly 10 to 15 minutes away at most. And I just, if anything, want to make sure the board was aware this is happening. And if anything is going to be done to resolve it, if not this year, maybe next year. I understand, we have limited resources here, so nothing can be done overnight, which I understand. But it just seems to me if we need kids to be on the bus, especially special ed kids, and Zach, when he gets picked up, I see there's 3 other kids on the bus, so, there's kids that are actually getting picked up before him. So really, I just think, if the kids have to be on the bus that long, I think there has to be some kind of alternative solution eventually. Because I've really seen, my son's loved buses since he was little, and now he hates riding the bus. My wife's been driving him, 4 days out of the 5-day week, if she can. So really just wanted to make the board aware and, just be an example how it's affected me and my family so far.
What's your bus number?
I don't know the bus number. I just know, I live on Pamela Drive, south right there. I'm like a block away. And he's probably the 4th pickup because there's 3 kids on there. So I just think that's a long time to have kids on a bus, especially if it's 10 minutes away.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation from Western Avenue School. This is an informational item. Emily Moreau, Western Avenue teacher, and a few students will share a presentation regarding implementing flipped elements in Google Classroom into her work with the Board of Education.
Thank you.
Okay, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting us this evening. We're really excited to present. So when the idea of Google Classroom was kind of introduced to us as teachers in August, I did attend an FIE session, and I really want to stress that I'm dabbling in this. You guys all set? I really want to stress that I'm dabbling in this because the math enrichment groups that I see, for example, the 4th grade group, or part of the 4th grade group that I have this evening with me, I only see them for 30 minutes at a time. So as a teacher who kind of goes around the building, I constantly feel like 30 minutes it goes by in a blink of an eye. So when, at this FIU session, when the idea of Google Classroom was presented to us, I kind of thought, well, how could I use this to kind of maximize our time? So, like I said, we're dabbling in it. So this is kind of the first steps to how I'm going to hopefully implement a flipped kind of environment toward the end of the school year. So my presenters here, Emily Thompson and Oliver Paredes, they're going to show you a couple of things on just the basics of how we have worked with Google Classroom and Math Enrichment. So Emily, can you start us off with what the app actually looks like?
The app is a chalkboard and there's a bunch of people on it, and you put it down at the bottom of the screen.
Then how do you log in?
Well, there are different classes that you can be in, and then if you press the plus button, then that will go to add a new account, and then you can type in the password, and then you're in that class.
Excellent. Okay, so how do you know which class to go to?
You can just read the names, and we're in 4th grade math enrichment.
All right. Perfect. So Oliver, how do you view a video? Can you walk us through that?
So, here it says unit rate word problem. I'm going to click on that. And so you go under materials over the gray thing right here. So, and then you see a YouTube video that says solving ratio word problems, and it's 86 seconds. So I'm going to click on that.
And as the video is loading, Oliver, as you're watching the video, what are you kind of looking and listening for?
I'm looking for the question you asked us, and I will share our font.
So then after the students would watch the video, they would obviously post a comment on what they've learned or something that kind of sparked their interest. So Oliver, can you show us how you can go back to Google Classroom to post a comment?
So what you do, pretend I'm watching this video. So here I go, watching the video. And then finally, I'm done watching it. You click the arrow way up here that says back to the classroom. And then you click that. And then you're done.
So then from there, can you show us where you post a comment and how you do that?
So what you do is you click, oh yeah, post a comment.
Yes.
You click right over here, add class comment. So I'm going to click that.
Perfect.
So I'm going to write my song.
As he's typing that, as you can see, the question that's posted above is what the students would respond to. So from there, Oliver, what do you do?
You see this blue arrow over here? You click that. It's kind of like a blue arrow thing. So you click it, and then it's done. And
So then the last step would be to show me that your work is done. How do you do that?
so you go to your work, and then you click mark as done. And then it'll, a big check mark will appear, and that's how you know it'll be done.
Perfect.
And then,
What's the last part about that private comment?
so the private comment, add private comment. So it's just like a question from the student to the teacher. No other students can see it.
Exactly.
So, if you want to go and so we don't usually use that because Miss Maroc wants the other kids in our class to see what we're working on?
Exactly, so that's why when they post public comment, they can kind of see what everyone else has done. So, in the future with this, like I said, later on in the year, my goal is, because those 30 minutes are so precious, my hope is to post a video, have the students comment on it or ask a question outside of class. So when they come in, they have an idea of what we will be doing right away. So instead of spending maybe 12 to 15 minutes on that topic, maybe we'll only be able to spend like 2 and then, start the interactive activity from there. So that is about it. Thank you very much for listening.
If you have your 2 students yourself come over, I'd like to shake your hand. We have certificates for our students.
Oh, wonderful.
Good job, Emily and Oliver. We appreciate your diligence and learning new programs and making learning fun. So thank you. When I start with Mr. Simmons, you shake his hand.
Thanks so much. Oliver?
Thank you very much. Oliver, good job. Thank you. Here you go. Emily?
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation by Dr. Clay Graham on map data analysis. Dr. Graham? And I don't want you to be intimidated by our tremendous presenters.
It's always tough to follow kids or animals.
It is.
So I appreciate this opportunity. I'm looking forward to hearing the comments from Oliver and Emily after I finish up to make sure I'm getting covered the subjects that I'm told. Number 1, should I stand there or here? Can you hear me or what?
Wherever it comes.
Yeah, I think there's great.
Okay, that's fine. Do I shoot this over there or there?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Oh, it goes throughout the whole room. Okay. Earlier this year, Amy and Greg came to me and were asking me questions about MAP, which you had just received results. One of the reasons they were asking me questions is that since this is the year that PARC first was being implemented throughout the state of Illinois, and there was great uncertainty when the PARC results would be released. And after talking to Greg earlier this afternoon, that concern was reinforced when the superintendent of schools for the state of Illinois said you can expect the PARC results sometime later this year. So we're working with the most recent information that we have, which I think is important. But likewise, we're looking forward to PARC, and those results will be coming, but only until the state of Illinois releases them. Our objective is somewhat simple: to accurately quantify trends and performance gaps in student performance. What type of performance gaps? The first thing we're looking at levels of scores, and secondarily, change over the long run and short run. We want to look at each school, each grade, each subject, year by year. The questions we want to answer: what are the exact levels of performance, growth, district performance overall, and cohort performance? By cohort, we mean how are the same students doing from one year to the next year, rather than looking at just the grade. Yeah, we start with that. And I'm so glad that Emily and Oliver were here today, because one of the most important things we're talking about today is making data comparable by using ratios and proportions, which you just talked about. The scores that we get from ISAC as well as MAP are not directly comparable from year to year, grade to grade, subject to subject, or in any other manner. You have to index them by proportions. Sound familiar? So we take the MAP score for a given grade and subject and index it by the average, so the score of 100 has a multiple series of meanings. It means the average score for all MAP scores throughout the whole country. So if you have a score in a school or a student that's 105, that means you're 5% above the national average. Proportions are very important. So we use that throughout looking at math, as well as ISAC, as well as PARCC. Our measures are going to be levels of performance, like the 100. The growth, what is that over year to year? Trends, short and long term, and cohorts. These are the things we're looking at. The first thing, these are levels, and they all mean the same thing. 101.9 means that Floresborn Hills, averaging over 2009 to 2014, was 1.9% above the national average. It also means, but we're going to cover in the next slide, of what the trend means, which is a score of 100 and 100 from one year to the next. So we saw Floresborn Hills was improving from 2009 to 2014, but improved more from 2014 to 2015. This is very important looking at the most recent year, because was it 2012 or that Common Core was introduced in Floresborn. Anytime that you introduce a new curriculum, it takes 1 to 2 years for it to be implemented and for the results to be seen. It doesn't happen right away. Just like if anyone's a golfer, you take a golf lesson, you're not doing really well the first time you go out and play. It takes a few times to learn what you learn, if you will. Here we see Heather Hill. Lower performance from 2014 to 2015. Same thing with Serena Hills, but Western Avenue improved, Parker improved, and the district overall improved. So you can see comparison with respect to reading had improvement in all areas with the exception of Heather Hill and Serena Hill. Next is mathematics. Keep in mind, when we're talking math, we're only talking reading scores and mathematics scores. That's it. Now I want to remind you that the national average is 100. Now here we see Floresborn Hills in mathematics improved, nice improvement from the 2009-14 out to the 14-15. We see improvement in Heather Hill. Sierra Hill fell. Western Avenue improved. Parker fell. Overall, the district improved, but we see weakness in mathematics at Parker and Serena Hill. Let's think about growth. This is what happens from year to year in terms of what is going on. We see improvement in reading. We see improvement in math at Floresborn. Here we see an actual reversal of a trend in Heather Hill in reading. Red is reading, blue is mathematics. Situation found in two areas here, and then we have improvement, and you can see the inconsistency going across. So we identified reading issues earlier, and now we're looking at some growth of the situation with respect to mathematics. This is a snapshot. Let's look at the trend of what is going on. Keep in mind, the national average of 100 is what it is for MAP scores across the whole country. If you're above 100, that's good. If you're 100 from one year to the next, that also means you're meeting the standards of improvement. So it's important to keep in mind, as long as you're above 100, you're doing some good things. But we notice here, ironically, Western Avenue, which is one of the higher performing schools, actually had a decrease in the trend, even though it's well above. That's one thing this is Western Avenue, I'm sorry. It was Heather Hill that had the diminishing returns. And then Sierra Hill. These two schools seem to have a situation that needs to be looked at over time. This is respect to reading, and this is respect to mathematics. I'd like to point out, every one of your schools had improvement in the trend line from 2014 to 2015. The Common Core efforts that were put in the previous 2 years are manifesting themselves in improvement at this stage of the game. That's a very important situation. What does this hodgepodge say? Well, green is better than blue, we know that. But that's not what it says. If you look at the grades 6, 7, and 8, which is Parker, they're in the lower portion of what is going on here in terms of the trends. Here, the heavy black line is the score of what the district is doing as a whole. But you can see a weakness, a greater weakness in Parker, or the middle school, as compared to the elementary school, in terms of the trends and the level of performance. There's something going on between the elementary area and the junior high, middle school area that are inconsistent, that needs addressing. I'm not telling you what is happening, but there's something going on that needs to be addressed. That's what Amy and Craig did. Similar situation in mathematics. Now, cohorts. The reason you have short-term lines is you look at people that are in 8th grade, you have a long history to look at. People that are in 3rd or 4th grade, you have a short history. But look down here. This is what's important. Everything is moving up with the exception of 6th grade for the cohorts. Every single cohort was moving up from 2014 to 2015 with the exception of 6th grade. That's remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Similar situation in mathematics. Here we have 6th grade again. Everything else is moving up. Very, very positive things that are taking place with respect to cohorts. So we see, on the whole, math and reading are moving up, cohorts are moving up, and grade to grade are moving up. Let's look at these things overall. In the long run, negative trends are reversed. This is because implementing Common Core, you pay your dues, and then you start to change things. Only exception is reading at Heather Hill. The grades, long run, negative trends reversed. Exception is 8th grade reading and mathematics in 4th and 6th grade. Subject, reading Heather Hill and Serena Hill, mathematics, Serena Hill and Parker Hill. Those are one of the ones that you have to take a look at to see what's going on. And the cohorts, the exception was 4th and 6th grade. Significant progress is being made all the way across the board. This is the important thing. The benefit of math, you can take a look at how these things compare on a national basis. The benefits of PART and ISAT scores that you're going to be able to look at this compared to your competition of similar districts in the area from a demographic and geographic standpoint. I'm anxious to see what the PART numbers say, but we're going to have to wait a bit for that. Any questions? I'm going to start with Oliver if she has any questions about this. You like ratios?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes.
That 6th grade cohort, are those the students that have just begun 7th grade now? So there were 6th graders in the spring of 15, was that correct?
5th graders.
These are all spring to spring. Thank you for
Yes.
bringing that up. These are all comparing spring to spring numbers.
Okay. So in the spring of 15 as 6th graders
Correct.
that are now in 7th grade.
No, they're
No.
actually the spring of 16 6th graders are 6th graders.
Right. They were 5th graders last year.
Okay. So they're 6th graders now.
They're 6th graders now. All the cohort is what they are in
Yeah.
2015. Thanks for asking.
So how is this data used, given that each building has already done their improvement plan for the year? How do we, how have we historically used this data once we have received it?
I'll let Dr. Warwick answer that. This is being presented right now.
Right.
However, we've had these for,
So when we do our analysis year to year from spring to spring, we have a data retreat in June. And at that data retreat in June, building teams come together, look at the data and analyze the data and start to make action plans as far as what needs to be done so we can start out our year in August ready to hit the ground running. As far as it informs then what work needs to be done at the August data retreat. So there's the one in June where all the work and preparation is done and they really look at, dive deep into all of that data. We make intervention maps for students who aren't performing well. And then that helps inform what the greatest area of need is so they can come in August and build that school improvement plan.
and then how we monitor that, they have PLCs throughout the school year, there's data days, but 3 times a year, each building leadership team reports out to Cabot and myself. We go through and we ask these different questions, and they show evidence on what they're doing. And it's not only for this, but it's for their entire school. That help?
Okay, just to clarify again, what Mr. Simmons had asked, the 6th grade cohort those are our current 6th graders?
That's correct.
Okay. And, okay.
It means the index on the scores. By indexing, not that's ratios, indexing, same thing, is that you're able to compare from what they did in 5th grade at the end of the year to 6th grade. And that's why when you saw the index go down for the cohorts, you're able to identify exactly that they were going down.
Okay, and on that same point, can you tell me what is, now the average was, for national average was 100, correct?
The average for any grading subject for any year is 100. That's
Okay.
correct.
And do we have a comparison for Illinois data, like where Illinois falls?
No, we do not.
And is that because it has not been?
It is not presented in that way that you can get it.
Okay.
And that's the value of using PARC and indexing from the State Board of Education, so we can index it compared to the state of Illinois, the individual other districts, grades within other districts, and a whole litany of other things. MAP is only good for comparing to the national norms and how you're comparing to yourself and the national norms.
Okay, so this is strictly 2015 normative data.
Oh, it's 2009 through 2015. There's a timeline in there. We look at all, we normalize all the 25 or 30,000 or 70,000 scores. They're all in there.
Okay, can you, I guess briefly, just describe how data was renormed between 2009 and 2015 in terms of MAP scores?
Okay. I could let Oliver tell what's going on, but I'm going to take that away from her at this point in time. If you take a MAP score, 2009, I know what MAP average is, the national average for grade subject in that year, X. I know what the score is for each individual student from that grade, subject, and year. I simply divide A by B. That will give a ratio, I multiply times 100, and that gives me an index. So if the index is over 100, that shows you're above the national average. If it's below, you're below. And so you compare from year to year, subject to subject, grade to grade, which you cannot do without the normalization of data.
Okay, and that's how you're able to keep consistency between the older norms?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Now, everyone take out a pencil and paper. There will be a quiz. That's the teacher.
One more question. So in the retreat, well, actually, one more question for you, and then one, I think, for Dr. Ward or Dr. Oster. On one of your slides, you had need selective focus.
Need to what?
Need selective focus. I just wanted to understand.
All right, let's go back to that slide.
Needs, go right back, one back.
Another, right here.
Need selective focus.
Selective focus, yes, absolutely. Here we see that performance is very good from year to year, but here we see that Heather Hill and Serena are below the averages, and likewise in 2014-15, 2015, and 2015 in Park Hill. These two things have to be focused upon because they're not meeting up to what the long-term average has been. So those are, when I say selective, I mean here and here.
Okay. So then that leads to my next question, which is, so we have the data, and can you just describe a little bit more in detail with the retreat? Do you have a narrative that now accompanies the data to understand why there's negative growth in reading at Heather Hill and Serena, and math at Serena and Parker?
Do we have a narrative from the data?
Well, you know the data, but now do you know the story behind the data? Like what's going on? Why is there negative growth? Why is that trending?
So that's why they look and focus on what the greatest area of need is, and that's the whole point of when they're working with the school improvement plan and looking at and reviewing data to find out what that greatest area of need is. With that greatest area of need, they then have to find strategies that will then focus and help them, which is why we put together the school improvement plan, and why each school, this is more proof as to why each school, we can't just have a blanket school improvement plan, because each school has a different GAM, greatest area of need, and so that's why each building with their leadership teams are really looking at that data to say, okay, this worked, this didn't work, with the Plan, Do, Study, Act portion of it, with that research-based component of we have to go and we have to try to implement something, then if it's not working, we have to see what we can do to correct and put something else in place. So that's why they're working and looking at the data, and that's why we have data review days every 9 weeks, pretty much, in each of the buildings, so that they can touch that data, and then Dr. Duster was referring to, they then come over and report out to the district office to that progress on how they're doing and working towards their areas of need.
So Flora.
I just want to make, controlling this question, if I'm not asking the same question, but tell me something different, but, so, I appreciate the focus on, okay, so we have to implement something, but it's still not clear to me that we have a grasp on the why. So I'm hearing a lot of data, because, so we know the issues, right? So that's really good, we've done a lot of great analysis of the data. And then it seems like we jump to the solution, so now we put in place plans. But we all know too, if you don't know the why, you throw one of them on and figure it out, and we say, okay, did that work? Okay, that didn't work. We got to go back and try something else, and that didn't work. So what I'm not hearing, and maybe, I'm kind of dense in this area, so, because I look kind of specific, I'm still not hearing that we've been doing this kind of long enough, a little bit. We've been in the district, we've had a good administration in place that we're not getting, I'm not hearing the why. We understand that this is happening at the 6th grade level because whatever reason is, so therefore this is the solution we're going to because this is the why, not just this is the problem and this is the solution. There's a piece that's missing for me, which is the why.
If I could interject for 1 second
Sure.
with respect to that. Math scores, for instance, we see Serena Hills here at 99.1. We see there's an issue in reading here. It's below math, and it's also one of the lowest. So what math does has a series of different tests that they give within math, has different criteria. And certainly what happens with Amy and her team will be going through and looking at the student profiles of what areas that generated this number, which may have 7 or 8 different components in it, and then address their plan from the details that are provided in the math testing system itself. Math is very, very detailed. This is about 10,000 feet. She's going to be going down to 1.5 feet to see what's going on there.
So I appreciate the data, and this is, again, I don't want to be, though I am being repetitive in the question, because it gets kind of cumbersome, because we ask these questions, I think, as a board, like every meeting we kind of go through, which is, I understand, maybe in layman's terms, maybe I'm looking for a paragraph or something that we've done an analysis of the data, and these are the points that we found. This is the why, this is lower, and that is the solution. So I don't know if it just can't be explained that simply, and I'm not, like, I'm not even questioning the data, I'm not questioning the source, I'm not even questioning the intensity with which you can dig down, which is really cool to me to be able to dig down and get these reasons and why it might be different for school. But when we have these conversations, the hard part is we're sitting on a board, so we don't do this, right? But we do have a community that's intelligent enough to understand that us, the whys, and a board that asks these questions. I still don't sometimes feel like we hear the why. We hear some very scientific, wonderful data, so I have. If there's anything I can stand behind and say, we do data analysis, we do it really well, and I just want that.
To simplify for you real quick, 1 second. Dr. Pierce, in regards to reading, for example, okay, I don't have your school improvement plan memorized, I can go look at it, but I believe that was it comprehension? One
Yes.
thing was identified?
Yes.
So we know those, so comprehension, it could be fluency, on those types of things. So once we identify those in the data days, that is what we work on per grade level. So that's, I believe that's what you're asking. What are those things?
Yeah, the
Identify
ones, I
those.
think.
Those are the
And
ones.
that might be, like, if I'm not looking at information we received, it has like how, and maybe I'm just missing that part of it, which is, okay, so this is a solution, and which is, I know you all only have a certain amount of time to present, so it just sounds like we're going from the data to the solution. And this is the part for me to be able to have a conversation confidently as a board, so if I'm talking to one of our members of our community, we really got to the why, go to this board meeting and talk to you about how we got to the, why we're doing the solution. We're not just throwing mud on the wall. We're not just trying something and then this doesn't work and we do something else. We specifically have a plan because of the why.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that each building principal probably is very intimately aware of the whys. We don't understand the whys, but I'm certain that you understand. So, and that's the narrative that I would want to hear, because the trend, because you are creating solutions and stuff still isn't working. Like the trend, there's growth overall, but there's something going on at some of our schools that we don't have a real understanding of what that is.
So at each, we then take it because in order so that it's not just something that it is something that they work on. When we talk about that greatest area of need, Dr. Pierce just said it's comprehension as far as reading, so we know the strategies that we have to put in place. We have taken it a step further, and grade level teams produce action plans. So we have that alignment then to say, okay, we know that comprehension is our focus here. The grade level teams have action plans, and then we take it a step further. There are goal setting with students. So we're looking at best practices across the board, and we know that when there's alignment from the classroom to the grade level, to the building, to the district, that's how we're seeing this improvement. So we do know the nitty-gritty and the specifics, which is why we have those 2 data retreats to give them time to work on and find what is an area that we need to improve upon, what are all the strategies that we know are best practice strategies that we put in place, and we review it 3 times a year so that they're always doing that. So we have the system and structures in place, and then when they go to the data days, the teams are talking about, okay, we're looking at this, we see that overall it could be fact fluency as an area of need. And so then we're working on, because when you stay at the grade level and are bringing all of that up as well, that also gives us the results. So you are absolutely correct when you say the principals and the grade level teams know what those greatest areas of need are.
No, you are.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Oliver,
Yes, so if at Western Avenue, scores were the highest in Illinois, why would they be decreasing in it says decreases in
with the trend, we may be very high. Remember, Western's not highest in Illinois. We have very high scores in Western Avenue, but that doesn't mean they're consistent from year to year. And so, even though you may be good now, that may not mean that you were good last year or as good the year before or next year. That's the difference between a trend and an average. Okay?
Are there any more questions?
So, I guess this is more of a statement. If this is not a class with these same kids in the same grade level, they'll go on with, and again, we'll see the same result coming up, or maybe even something far greater. And I guess what I was just trying to go back on is you were saying in about 9 weeks or every 9 weeks,
We review the data, and what we've seen, like when those building leadership teams come to report out with us, when they come to the fall report out, they might have a greatest area of need of comprehension, and then after they work on that and they come after the mid-year, we will see, I would say consistently, and anyone can say, that greatest area of need changes, so it doesn't remain comprehension. In some cases, it might remain. So for example, in math, we realized operations and algebraic thinking was something that we were needing to work on. And that was something that was remaining consistent. So we went and we looked at the curriculum and make sure that we're covering operations and algebraic thinking if that's our greatest area of need. So we are looking for trends also when they come to the district level to see if we have the same area of need across the district, because then that indicates if it's curricular issues or if it's something that's at a building level. So it's a rather complex system to answer a question as to how we're working on that improvement.
I'd like to point out one thing. I work with many school districts throughout Illinois as well as the rest of the country. Rarely have I seen such an improvement in 1 year as the cohort movement from 2014 to 2015. In virtually every school, virtually, there were a couple exceptions, the movement was upward. That's very, very rare, and you're to be complimented for it. So whatever you're doing, it's working.
Could you repeat that?
Who asked?
You did.
Okay, I just want to address you and say, okay, in looking at the cohorts, which is the same student from year to year, okay? And you want to be able, if it was just level, that would mean that you're meeting the standard growth trends as set out by math. From 2014 to 2015, the cohorts in math and reading as a district in virtually all schools went up. I never see that they go up so uniformly in all schools. And you're to be complimented for that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Is it reflected on there, on that, maybe?
Okay, we're talking cohorts,
Right.
and that's this one, for reading and for math.
Dr. Graham, in your educational experience, when a new initiative comes down statewide, what has been your experience? For example, last major initiative was 20 years ago, 25 years ago with ISAC. So did you see a similar type of roller coasters with that?
There's a great deal of ambiguity in the first year after new testings as different districts accommodate. Keep in mind, not the testing this year, but the year before, 20% of the questions on the ISAC scores were Common Core based. So there was a little bit of introduction to that thing, which did not have really a very significant effect on the results from district to district, school to school. Now, with the full park expansion of this thing this year, I'm holding my breath. You know, I expect to see a lot of inconsistencies. Also, the breadth of the examination has been broadened. So they're going to be looking at more years, more subjects, and all that. And one of the things that scares the absolute crap out of me is the testing of writing. My experience with writing at the state level, a disaster would be an understatement of the incompetency at the state level in terms of which is implemented. I fully expect that to be the case again, because when writing was used in ISAC, it was beyond ridiculous. It was so bad and so inconsistent and so non-reproducible that I eliminated writing from all my analysis when that was actually used by the state. I fully anticipate from the experience I've seen and the way it's being implemented in the state, that situation with writing will manifest itself in a very similar way.
Can I ask a question? I want to go back to the cohorts for a moment. The one on the math.
The math, that one up there.
And you said pretty much all of them are up.
Right.
Well, you're looking at probably the majority, is that what you're looking at?
I'm looking at everyone except 6th grade.
Okay, so right, we got the exceptions, okay.
Yeah, no, when I say virtually, I mean 1 or 2 didn't make it. But 6th grade, there's an issue. That's a cohort issue. I don't know what it is. And I'll look to Amy, and she's going to have to go back or she probably already knows, but I just know something's not right in downtown Flossmoor.
Let me propose something. Sixth graders now. Spring of 4th grade, spring of 5th grade.
No. Spring of 6th grade, spring of 5th grade.
Sixth graders now.
Right. 6th grade there.
They were fifth graders in the spring of 15, right? Spring over spring.
No, in the spring of 2014, they were fifth graders.
Okay, so they're seventh graders today.
No. The sixth graders took the exam this spring.
In sixth grade last year.
Fifth grade. They were fifth graders.
Was it fifth grade that they took?
No.
I thought they took the exam this spring. The math score from this spring when there were sixth graders.
Yeah, they're now seventh graders.
No.
These are last, that's who are
Oh,
last
over
year's.
something, correct. I'm sorry, you're correct. I'm sorry.
6 to 7.
Right.
6 to 7. That's the problem. In math for this cohort, 6 to 7.
Right.
Okay. Now let's look at
Fifth to sixth, because now they're seven.
5th to 6. Okay, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. 5th to 6. Let's look at this purple line. Go back 1 year, right? 5th to 6th. Now look at this red line, 8th grade. 5th to 6th. That's the problem.
Right.
And it's the same way in reading, it's not as pronounced if you look at the reading aid. 5th to 6th, problematic. 5th to 6th.
Good, thank you for pointing that out.
It's not a cohort issue necessarily, although that's magnified in the 6th grade, which kind of bounces around and sees a sharp decline after an
You see the
increase.
characteristic for each.
It's 5th to 6th, 5th to 6th, reading and math, problematic.
One of
5th to 6th.
But again, the question still is communicated the why. Because we know, because we've been hearing this conversation even without math. We know this. It's just, close your eyes, open them again. You know 5th to 6th. We've seen that. We've had a really great conversation about the fact that our grammar schools are doing great. But what should be the shining star of our community, which is Parker, 5th to 6th. So that part is there. That simple sentence that says, we got a handle on the why. We are kicking butt in our grammar schools, and they're getting to the most critical, and we're having an issue, and we really are addressing it, and we're not throwing things on the wall to see what sticks. So, that just would, and honestly, just help the conversation, because we're there, we got it, like I said, the data analysis is there, and it's clear, and it's in so many different forms, from math to just the teachers' comments to things that we're seeing about the grading, the trend, to honestly coming to kids at home and going, what the hell is going on in the 6th grade, and I was kicking butt 5th. We get that in our classrooms. The why and the we're on top of it is really, I think, can get a really good community jazz behind whatever that solution is, and what we need to do as parents to support it, and what we're doing. And it might be cultural pieces, but, this is really great. I just would love to, that piece.
Mrs. Marks?
I'm not sure which expert in the room this question gets directed to, but there are plenty of experts, so one of you might have the answer. The only thing I can see that changes, our curriculum is consistent. The only thing I see that changes is we're mixing kids up with a whole bunch of new faces in a new environment between 5th grade and 6th grade. They don't get that at any other point in our district, correct?
That's
So-
one factor.
So,
Right.
let me just follow my train of thought. Is there any data that shows us how that affects kids in general? Like, is there some kind of a other switch besides the fact that they're all entering puberty? Yeah, I'm sure, right? So yes, I thought you would have a good answer for me,
It's a
Dave.
different test.
It's a different test?
Yes, the one math test is a 6th or 8th grade test, and the other one is an elementary, so it's a whole different test.
Okay, so my understanding of math was it just kept leveling up, but there's a junior, there's an
They have a
elementary.
different
and a-
version of the test for 6th or 8th grade.
Even though maybe in that test, the scores are normalized, so that will minimize the difference. So 100, things are normalized, so 100 is still the average for math in 6th grade as it is in math in 5th grade.
Okay,
So the
so,
normalization takes that little bump in the road out.
You're asking what was different, I'm just telling you that's
so
what's
there's
different.
that piece, and then there's the piece where it's the only time in our district that kids completely switch their environment, right? And I'm wondering what effect.
No, I actually
Affect
went
that.
to Serena Hills, and then I went to Parker in 6th grade, and that is a year it's difficult, because you have a lot of different social groups coming together. That's a tough year, going from
I think-
Serena and
Yeah,
Parker.
I just think that there's perhaps an academic and then there's another social emotional social-emotional component that maybe isn't as involved in some of the other grades. Not to downplay the academics, but I think it's important to maybe find out a little more information about that as well. Because they're navigating a lot of stuff in sixth grade, a whole lot of stuff in sixth grade.
Mrs. Huckabee?
I have a question. So, Mr. Kennedy, you said it's a different test. Is this, and I'm just asking because I don't know, isn't this test, or the test that the sixth graders are given, isn't it for what they should have mastered first through fifth?
The way the MAP test works, and please feel free to edit what I'm saying if you like it wrong. As you answer questions correctly, you get harder and harder questions. It's a responsive test to the test taker, and it's
So if I
designed.
just happen to get lucky and just guess right, I'm just throwing this out.
Right.
It's gonna accelerate me, and then I may get stumped.
But if you get it wrong, it takes you back down. So the level of difficulty may go up and up and up. But then, and keep in mind, this is just one metric. And to this Mark's, to point is that there's a huge social-emotional impact on students that may not be measured by the MAP, and you're in a different environment. So in the environment of fifth grade, when you take this test, you follow this path that you've been practiced at, and when you're in a new testing environment, it might be different. I mean, there's different things that factor into it. But the test itself is designed to be as standard as possible, so that you're really not comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing apples to apples that are grown the next year. I mean, it's meant to be as consistent as possible at a test like this can be. Does that make sense?
Because we see jumps up again in 7th and 8th grade, right? So it's really that 5 to 6. You wouldn't expect to see that kind of a jump in 7th to 8th grade if something wasn't occurring in 6th grade, because those 7th grade scores go spring 6th grade to spring 7th grade. If only the calendar year went to school, it would be so much easier. So if we were really doing something that needed complete overhaul, we would see it again in 7th and 8th grade.
The drop.
The drop, right? I mean, we're seeing a ramp up. We're just seeing 1 year of a drop, which leads me to believe we've got a few other issues going on here besides just.
One other issue, I'm
I
sorry.
didn't mean to belabor that point, to make sure I was understanding it.
One other issue is that this is not a huge margin of, we're dropping from 101 down to 59. I mean, this is, when you look at this in terms of a large scale on a standard, these are little fluctuations in the middle. These are, because of the way the numbers are staged on the left, it's done so you can see things in a more dramatic fashion. But when you really look at this in the broad picture, these are smaller fluctuations. Going from 100 to 100.1, in the larger picture is not an enormous leap, but it's a sign of good progress. It's something that's meant to give some depth. Am I correct?
If we're looking here, we're looking at something approximating, looking at this one here, 102 to 99. So there's a 3% difference, which is a significant difference. But it's not, as you say, it's not 10 points or anything else of that kind. But the point is, you still want to pay attention to the direction of magnitude. And since these are normalized data, they're even more significant.
Mr. Simmons?
Students that come into the district in 6th grade, are we able to get their 5th grade MAP scores?
We do not get MAP scores from other districts unless that is something within the packet that they share for student data. We do.
So it's
screen-
sometimes.
We screen all of our new students and give them a MAP test so that we know where they are when they're moving in. And we have that test result, we get it in June and we test it in August.
Are those results included as part of the spring of 5th grade in my
No.
example? Or not? Are the students who leave the district after 5th grade, are those results in here as spring of 5th grade?
Yes.
So you may have the case where you have top students in 5th grade who choose to go to a different middle school. They've received good MAP scores, and their scores fall out in 6th grade, assuming they would have done good or grown. And you have potential bad students come into the district in 6th grade, and their poorer MAP scores in spring of 6th grade are included here. That's one possible explanation of what's going on.
One thing I want to point out here that's omitted from this data is we're not seeing the fall scores, because what we have seen is, in looking recently, our 6th graders this year, their RIT score in the fall was 10 points lower than it was in the spring of 5th grade. So what our students are showing, what this does not indicate, is that our students are showing growth throughout their 6th grade year.
Fall to spring.
From fall to spring, which is a measurement of the instruction they're receiving in 6th grade. They are demonstrating growth. The problem is that when they're coming into us and they're taking a test in fall, and they've had minimal instruction in 6th grade, there's been a precipitous drop from when they left FIT.
If I can share some data real quick and move on. In the spring, to illustrate what Mr. Kennedy said, in the spring, our current 6th graders this year, when they took the test as a 5th grader last spring, in math, their overall RIT average was a 229. This fall, that same group of students, cohort, a 218.4. That was a 10.6 point drop over the summer. Now, Mr. Simmons, in speaking with what you were asking about, I went in and I took out all of the new students to 6th grade to our district. There were about 30. I took them out because I wanted to see if you took out those students who were being exposed to our district for the first time, what would the effect on that score be? Keep in mind again, everyone, including new students, was 218.4. That was a 10.6 point drop. You take out all the new students, the overall RIT was still 219.6. That is still a 9.4 point drop. So it had an effect, but a very minimal effect from what we saw.
Okay.
But isn't it and Dr. Moore, maybe you can answer this, isn't it common across all grades that there is typically a drop from spring to fall? I mean, I don't know what happens during the summer with kids. I mean, kids are not in school all year, so the idea that they would come back stronger than they left in the spring, that it doesn't really make sense. So I think it's pretty common that there's a drop when they take it because they take it like the first full week of school.
So, and that's why it is important to look at the spring to spring data so that we can work with that regression recruitment and try to find ways that we can get them back to where they were at a quicker level pace, however you want to look at that. When you look at fall to spring, that's something that we always start out with so that people can start to understand growth, what typical growth is, and how we need to make catch-up growth in some cases. And so if you're looking at a student who's performing lower, we need to have them not only make the typical growth, but also catch-up growth so that we can get them to the grade level or to whatever our expectation is, depending on where they're falling for that scale. So the purpose at looking at that spring to spring is so you can work with that regression recoupment factor. And then we need to find out what is it that we need to do to work with a wider variety of students over the summer to keep skills up.
Dr. Warwick, even in our subgroups though, even at Serena, we're not there making that typical growth, but we are making growth. I mean, look at the measurable impact of our interventions and the number of ELL, and even those kids in our subgroups that were below grade level, those kids are making significant growth. And that, I don't think, is really captured there. Are they up to grade level yet? Probably in some cases, no. But are they making growth? Are we closing that gap? Absolutely.
And that's what the whole point.
And I think that could be a little misleading. I think that in the trend line from 14, 15, I think that that's a positive. But if you go back, I agree that I don't think it's a cohort. I don't know if I really think that it's a cohort
Tran.
And there's the growth from the average of 2000, for reading and math, year-to-year growth. And it didn't show up that way when the data is normalized. That's one problem with using the raw information from math, that you get a misdirection in what's going on. But I think looking at the fall to spring may be more relevant in some of these cases than the spring to spring.
Are there any more questions, comments? With that, I thank you, Dr. Graham. We always appreciate your thoughts and insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation upcoming to order by Ms. Odom, but since she is not able to make it this evening, I would suggest we table that until our next meeting of the week. Everybody okay with that? Yes. Next on the agenda, we have a review of the 2015 tax levy.
Ms. Lavella, you have your presentation for the Board of Education.
Okay. 2015 levy. A lot of you have seen a lot of these slides before. We just have brand new board members, so we're going to kind of go through all the principles. So those of you who have seen this multiple times, you can take a little nap on me when I have to do stuff. Okay, let's talk about taxation. The reason that we're talking about a tax levy in October as opposed to November and December is because due to truth in taxation, you have to have 20 days in between when I give to you a tentative levy and when you actually adopt it. If we waited until the November cow, you wouldn't have 20 days before your December meeting, and therefore we would be out of compliance. So instead, I'm here talking to you before Halloween. Another thing to remember about truth in taxation, if your aggregate extension is more than 5% over last year's aggregate extension, you need to put that pretty box in the newspaper. You see it all over the Southtown about December. Flip every page and there's those big black boxes. That's a truth in taxation notice if you go over 105% of last year's extension. Almost everyone does. So nothing really to be afraid of. We will hold a levy hearing December 14th board meeting, and that's when you will adopt a levy. Okay, so let's start with the basic principles of taxation of property taxes. And this was back to the beginning of time when they started the property tax. And it was simple. The taxing body, so you, the Board of Ed, would approve a rate. Okay. You would take that rate and you would apply it to the assessed valuation of the property. So let's go through an example. Let's say that you had approved a $2 tax rate per $100 worth of property value. Let's say the property is assessed at $10,000. So you take your $10,000, you divide it by 100, you multiply it by your rate, and the tax would be $200. Okay? Simple enough. That's the way it was originally designed. So as your property value would increase, the taxing body would receive increased revenue because it was a direct correlation to the amount of property assessment. So if your $10,000 property increased to $12,000, it was about a 20% increase in property value. You would find that proportionately you would get a 20% increase in your property tax, because then your $10,000 would be now be $12,000, divide it out, and you get $240 as opposed to the $200 originally. Got it? Simple. So now, what happens? Well, let's talk about the assessment value. Properties, by state law, are supposed to be assessed at 1/3 of market value. Except in Cook County. In Cook County, you actually have two, it used to be a whole lot more classifications, but now we're down to two different assessment rates. either 10% or 25%. Neither one of them is 33 1/3, okay? Which makes for a problem. The county is also assessed in 3 pieces, not annually like every other county in the state. So you've got your north side, your south side, and Chicago. 2015 right now is Chicago's assessment year, which makes assessments go on a little longer because you have the whole appeal process, and Chicago generally takes a little bit longer than the north side and the south side. So what do we have to do? In order to be able to compare property values, we need to put a multiplier on Cook County properties, because you have to be able to compare property to property across counties. So you have to take a 10 or 25% assessment, put something called a multiplier to it to make it comparable to, say, DuPage. Okay? And that's called a multiplier. Okay? And again, this isn't talking about making it actually match fair market value. It's talking about making sure the properties are comparable across the state. Okay. So if you look at the multiplier is going to be less than 1 if the assessments are found to average more than 1/3. But we know they can't be more than 1/3 because we already said they're 10 or 25. So your multiplier is always going to be more than 1.0 because we know that they're being assessed at 10 or 25% depending on the property. Okay? Greater than. Okay. This is how the multiplier is calculated. And these are actually last year's numbers that I showed you. What they do is the Department of Revenue comes up with, for each classification of property, what the actual assessment value was. And then they use a 3-year average and come up with what the weighted average is of the properties. And then they go through the calculation, basic algebra here. Remember, it has to equal 33 1/3. So you take your 12.7x equals 33 1/3, and you calculate it out, and that's how you come up with your multiplier. Now, like I said, these were last year's numbers. This was an estimate of what we thought was going to happen in 2014, based on we just kind of held the numbers flat to say, okay, well, what happens if it stays the same? What actually came up, so our estimate we thought was 2.607. The actual multiplier for 2014 was 2.72. So it was close enough. Good enough for our purposes. Here's what has happened to the equalized assessed values of Flossmoor District since 2005. As you can see, we're still way below where we were in 2005 since that crash.
Can I ask, on the previous slide, when it says south Chicago, north, south?
Those are the assessment years. Those are the triennial assessments. Okay. So now what happens? We take a very simple process, as simple as it could be with the fact that our assessments are done differently than the rest of the state. And in 1994, we put on PTAL, Property Tax Extension Limitation Act. Okay? And what that law said is that you can no longer increase your levy to anything other than CPI or 5%, whichever is less. Okay? So what it did was it really primarily altered how property taxes are increased. It no longer has a tie to your property value. Now it's just a tie to CPI. So what does that do? That artificially increases or decreases your rate. Okay? So let's see. Let's go back to the example. Okay. Our $10,000 property, that was now $12,000, we had said went from a $200 to $240 because of the increase in the property value. But that doesn't work anymore, because now the most we can do is 5%. So the 200 times 1.05 is 210. So what happens to your rate? Well, your rate actually decreases. It goes to 1.75. Since 2006, here's what your CPI is at. Okay. You're seeing a pretty picture instead. So it's been kind of all over the place. It used to be way back here. It used to say it was about, 2.5% on average. We're now probably closer to a 2% average when we hit that 0.10 year. That was a good one. We're not a whole lot higher this year, by the way, 0.8. So again, the consequence is that your rate is now down to 1.75 instead of that $2. So it's a compounding effect every year. You can only increase by CPI. Your tax rate drops, but your total taxes keep going up, okay? So let's talk about what happens in the converse. Property values have been going down, right? So what does that do? If you take that $10,000 property and change it to $9,000, but we're still allowed to put on CPI. So we get $210. So now your rate is up to $233. It's an inverse. Okay. So as your rate goes up, the value of your homes go down, and that's what that looks like. That picture is the percent change of your property values to the percent change of your tax rate. It is an inverse relationship. Is that a pretty picture or what? I was so pleased with the way that came out.
It looks like a shark, that's what it is.
Yeah, it kind of does. But it really does show very clearly that what happens, it's completely opposite. Okay? It no longer has anything to do with the property value. It has to do with CPI. Okay, so if rates keep going up, can the district keep levying higher? And I think you all by now know the answer to this, which is a big bang. No. Okay. These are the 5 areas where you are limited by law. You can only levy 3.5% out of the ed fund, 0.55 out of operations and maintenance, 0.4 special ed, 0.1 life safety, and 0.05 in working cash. This is where we are right now. Ed fund, you hit your max rate. O&M, you hit your max rate. Special ed, you hit it. Life safety, we're just a little bit underneath it. Working cash, you hit. Okay. We have a 0.8 CPI this year. If we levied in the exact same way that we did last year, and we have an EAV increase of 5%. It looks like we're finally starting to come up out of this, okay? What happens to the rates? You exceed your ed, you exceed your special ed, you exceed your O&M, you exceed your working cash. District, Cook County would pull us back and you'd lose $700,000. So you can't keep levying the way you are because you've hit your statutory max. So we have to look at it in a different way. Instead of being short, what we're going to do is levy in one fund more than use. And guess which fund we use? There you go. Say it. So at least say it out loud.
Transportation.
Yes, ma'am, we do. Transportation, because transportation does not have a max. So we levy it in transportation, and then we move it at the end of the year. Right now, we are budgeted. We have planned to move $2.7 million at the end of this year, because we're going to have to levy it into transportation, and then we can move it into education and O&M where we need. Okay. Remembering that we're still only able to levy 0.8% increase. Okay? Except this year we have something unusual happen. We have a tip coming on. And yes, it is on the same property that Meyer is going on. Okay? But we have a tip coming off with an increment. So the property value that's going to be coming onto our rolls as new property right now is valued at $3.5 million before the new assessment. Okay, which will really just be the change in the multiplier, which we expect will go up a little bit. So, you know, maybe a little bit more than $3.5 million property coming on. And what about Meyer? Well, we don't expect that the Cook County assessor is going to actually give us a quote new property for Meyer this year, that it will all go on the rolls next year. I've been in contact with Flossmoor, with the village, and we've been having some conversations, and they also don't believe that the assessor is putting any of that construction on in the 2015 rolls. They believe it will come all on in 2016 rolls. Okay. However, just to make sure that we are covered, I'm going to recommend that we levy for new property $6 million. Just to make sure we don't leave anything on the table, anything for granted, so that any new property coming on, we take full advantage of and we get the whole increase. Because that's really the only piece that you get that is above CPI. You're going to get a 0.8% increase on your levy, with the exception of new property. Your full rate goes on new property. That's going to mean about $200,000.
Can I interrupt real quick? Does everyone understand what that means? I know that's a big number. We've talked about this a lot. Everybody understand?
Here are the numbers that I am recommending that we put on as your levy. Okay. 14 million ed, 1.6 in special ed, right on down the line. What does that mean? It's too small. It's a really wonderful worksheet that PMA gives us every year to use. But what it means is that we're going to put in the newspaper that black box at 15% increase. What I've done here is I've actually run two scenarios. I've run a scenario that says what happens if property decreases by 10%? What happens if property values increase by 10%? And then I put both of those scenarios next to each other, and I grab the largest amount in every single fund so that I am covered from between -10, +10, with $6 million of new property. With that on, there should be absolutely no way that we don't capture your full levy and put it into the right fund so that we will continue to max out all of the education, O&M, and so on, so that the money is going where you actually need it to, and then the balance will go into transportation, and then we'll move it as we need it at the end of the year. Okay? But again, remember, it's going to be 0.8% plus any new property coming on. It's just a matter of making sure we capture it. Now, being that this has been such a completely kind of different levy, trying to figure out which way property values are going this year, and with this tip rolling off, I am 99.9% comfortable with this, but Wednesday I'm going to sit with Brad Brosey and having him put a second set of eyes on it, and make sure that he likes this number too, just to make sure, just at 0.01%, and I'm going to look at it. So we will put that notice in the paper, 15.05% levy increase. But again, remember, the county will pull us back to CPI, allow us to take advantage of any new property that goes on the rolls. And then you will have your hearing on December 14th. And questions?
When you talk about a tax, about a levy, and you see that number of 15.05, that could be 100. Be 99. It's a large number. What Ms. Liddell is trying to say is we're trying to capture the monies we can to help operate the school district. So if there are any questions from a community member on this, and when they come to our hearing, we can explain that information to them. But that is the answer, is to capture the money so that we can operate our school district on.
When do we expect to realize the benefit again of Meyer? When is it going to?
Well, let's see. You're going to have two pieces to this because it's also debt. Your first, what we're doing right now, what I fully expect is about $200,000 for the tip rolling off. So we get the benefit of the increment from that property from when they tipped it to now it rolls off. That you will see in the second installment of the 15 levy, which we won't see until the fall of next year. Then we'll see the construction come on in the 2016 rolls. And then we'll see that increase in the second installment of 2016 levy, which will be in the fall of 17. So we'll actually get two nice bumps 2 years in a row.
notice goes in the paper every year. Even if we weren't to levy 5%, which is a requirement, we still put it in there. The 15% may scare people. They may think my tax bill's going up by 15% because of 161. That's not the case at all. I would encourage them to come to the the levy meeting on 14th, because Fran will go through another presentation kind of hitting these highlights, but be willing to go into the weeds if somebody really wants to understand it better, and that's the best way to do it.
At your levy hearing too, I'll bring my, part 2 of this, if you will, which is, this is how much we're getting. It's just a matter of how much your piece of the pie is. So it's not so much a difference of how much your property is worth. It's about how much your property is compared to your next door neighbors, compared to the business down the street, and what your percentage of the whole is. That's when property tax is coming to play. And we'll do that in part 2 of the levy. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Lavella. Next, are there any other questions? Comments? Next on the agenda, we have landscaping and snow removal bids.
Yes, Board of Education, I'm letting you know this. We went out for bid. We opened up all of the bid packets and sealed bids on Friday. We had, I believe, the snow removal at 1 o'clock opening, and at 2 o'clock we had landscaping opening. It's about 3 years, every 3 years we do this. We had 5 or 6 for snow removal who bid, and we had 3 for landscaping. Because it was Friday, we are still evaluating all of the bids that came in. We're going to run through a frequency schedule to see what the total cost would be, or whatever our averages are over the years. And then I will be bringing a recommendation to the Board of Education at our November 9th meeting for both. I wanted to let you know that now. I know we like to have those things as a community of the whole, but everything has been done accordingly, and whatever the lowest responsible bid is the one that is recommended to the Board of Education.
Would you be able to tell if any of those were local?
All of them, was there one local?
2.
There's 2? Okay. I don't want to say names right now, but I know one was for sure. Depends on what you mean by local. You Flossmoor or close? We even had some northern, like Dundee's. Schaumburg. Schaumburg area. Yeah, that was odd. So anyway, we will be bringing that, and if we do get a blizzard before approval of those bids, we'll still have our current snow removal people that will be removing the snow for us. I hope. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, next on the agenda, we have the pilot Spanish survey class.
Yes, we have a bit of a dilemma, and I'm going to ask my representatives from the junior high to come up and speak to the board. We're going to let you know what our plan is and how we're moving ahead as far as a pilot for survey.
Good evening. In talking with Bruce and some other people with some background at Parker, the problem we have is that we have students in 8th grade who are receiving interventions based upon their MAP scores in either reading, which manifests itself in language arts, or mathematics. And then those kids, when they're taking their tests in the fall, we're getting data back that they're no longer needing those interventions because of how well they've done on the MAP test. Unfortunately, at that point, the Spanish class has been underway, and our kids are at a disadvantage because it's very hard to throw them in to a Spanish class, which is already 1/4 into the school year. So Mr. Nowinski, along with some other staff members at Parker, have talked about a way to try to remedy this, and what we've come up with is a pilot program we would like to introduce that would be taught by one of our Spanish instructors, who would be a highly qualified person, and it would involve those students who have shown proficiency via the MAP test, that they no longer need interventions. And this would also help us address transfers who come to our school from other districts that have not had Spanish and have not shown the need for an intervention, but in the past, unfortunately, they've been put into those classes for a lack of a place to place those children. So we think it's kind of a win-win for everybody involved.
One of the ways that our 8th graders receive that intervention is through a class known as REACH. REACH is divided up into 2 sections. One is a math section, one is a reading section. That REACH class is an academic core class. It is a 43-minute class that is taken every day, taught by a teacher. Again, when the MAP data comes in and shows us the students that are in that REACH class, which begins at the beginning of the year, has moved those students are scoring at a level that truly doesn't, that sort of math and reading support doesn't benefit them anymore. We have 2 options. We have an option, as we're exploring right now, to put them in a different type of core class, or we can keep them in that intervention throughout the entire year. In weighing the 2 options, if a student has moved to an acceptable level of performance above average, and many of the students that would fall into criteria are performing at 45th, 50th, even the 55th percentile in some cases, we feel it's beneficial to them to take them out of there, put more of a focus on the students that are still in there for more individualized instruction, and find an alternative. And that's why we came up with a pilot Spanish course that we could offer these students. As Mr. Kennedy alluded to, the other problem is, let's say we have an 8th grader coming in December, a brand new to our district, and they test, and they're testing at a very high level, and that does happen. The only option we have right now is to place them in that REACH class to get math and reading support. We do not have another alternative for them. We have found that really does not meet their needs. But again, we can't place them in a full-time Spanish class because they have missed the first 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 months of that class. What we want to do is offer this as a program to build a foundational level of Spanish, both in language and in culture, so that they can get acclimated to that when they go to the high school. If foreign language is something that they need to do, and they do need to do it as a requirement, and Spanish is interesting to them, they are now coming in with a leg up on their peers in that aspect. So
let's give the board a little bit of update. This is only for 8th grade.
Correct.
And the reason why, we have REACH, I think you've already covered that for an intervention part of it, but 8th graders are only class that we have a high school foreign language credit class. So the dilemma here is, I believe it's better for our children if we give them this opportunity than putting them into an intervention class that more or less their data shows they should not be in there. We've spoken to the association about this. I think it's a good idea. It's a pilot, so we plan on starting this next week.
The teacher is very enthusiastic about the possibility of doing this.
it's a curricular program she has researched well. We have found that it is ITAC compatible, which works well for us, so we're excited about the opportunities.
So would this only impact students who you have identified now who could benefit from this versus students who would take that after the holiday and their scores might show that, they don't need that level of intervention as well?
That's a good question. The issue would be is we started this off in October, 1st of November, and then we wait till the middle of January when that next data point comes through the analysis. We're now, again, 3 additional months that they've missed that. So at that point, we would need to make a determination on that. It would be difficult to move those students into that class when the other students have already had 3 months. So I don't have a definitive answer for you, but it's something we'd have to look at to the January data point. And it's important to note that the data points we look at are not just the fall data point. We use data points from the fall and from last year to come up with a cumulative look at who really would benefit from this. If a student's in the 9th percentile, all of a sudden they jump to the 40th. Well, to us that looks like an anomaly a little bit. So we're cautious on how we do that. These are students that have been making an upward trend. We're comfortable that they're moving in that right direction. And we were very, we looked at multiple data points to make sure we were taking the right students who would be eligible for this.
Ms. Horath, to just go a little bit further, I think 2 things that would determine that is, one, how many students we're talking about, because it's only 1 class period, and so there's only so many seats. You know, we're looking at about 18 students right now, so that would give us a little bit of flexibility if we would have students move in. However, at the next data point, you know, if another 18 qualified for transitioning out, we just wouldn't have the room. And I think because it is a new program, we're going to have to get some feedback from our teacher to see how, if it would be possible for her to differentiate, you know, that much. You know, now these kids have another quarter removed from that. So I would say it's not definitely a no that kids couldn't move in there, but definitely there will be some parameters in order for that to happen.
I have a question. So, and you've answered one of them, which is how many students we're talking about. But do we have some sort of mechanism in place by which we can see, okay, they're in the survey program, but you know these other scores are starting to drop. Maybe we need to, and something even before we get to the testing result report out, where we can catch this early on, and then what we can do at that point.
Well, yeah, because MTSS or RTI is supposed to be a fluid process anyway. We're doing some progress monitoring of the kids, just like when students phase out, if you will, the ELL program, we're mandated to still progress monitor them to see, you know, how successful they're being. So yes, you know, if we just because we place a student in here, and then if they start showing regression in the area that they were initially being targeted for interventions, we would then phase, you know, he or she back into the interventions.
Any further? It sounds like a great program, and I'm very enthused to hear this. This really sounds like a step in the right direction, and I'm sure that this will benefit them in a way that's very impactful and help them move forward in high school as well. Are there any other further questions or comments?
I do want to note that part of the process will be communicating with the parents of those students this week and saying, here's the situation, here's where we're at. Your child has shown that they can move out of this. We want to give the parents still a choice. We may have a parent that may say, you know what, I'm appreciative of the offer. I still want my child to get that reading and math support. We're definitely not going to stand in the way of that. We want to be open with our communication and be upfront with our parents as the schedule changes being made, as we normally would, get their input and then move forward. We'll make those calls this week with a goal of starting this a week from today on Monday. If we need more time because the communication is taking a little bit longer, we'll do that. We want to do it sooner than later.
That sounds fantastic. Can you tell me, just to refresh my reckoning, how many kids are in the REACH program currently?
You know, at the beginning of the year, I'm going to ballpark it, but it was in the neighborhood of 65 to 70. I believe we had 2 classes that were around 35, and again, those 35 were ultimately divided into 2 sections. So we're going from about 65 to 70, take the 18 away, we're going to be in the ballpark of 50 then.
Okay.
Those are broad numbers, those are estimates, but they're close.
Independently of the Spanish class, that sounds like great progress.
Yeah, we're excited, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the PTAB resolution.
Ms. Lavella?
When we have a property owner that is looking for a reduction in their assessed value of over $100,000, it is required to give notification to the school district. At that point in time, most of the time we hand it over to our attorney, the Hauser Izzo, and they file a timely intervention on our behalf to try and really what ends up happening is we most of the time end up in negotiations to try and find some middle ground that we can both be reasonably happy with. However, when we file those interventions, it has to be done in a timely manner. We get 30 days from the time that it is processed to get through. Each of those interventions have to be accompanied by a resolution from the Board of Education stating that they're intervening, or someone is intervening on their behalf, in this case, our attorneys. We do have a blanket one that we've been using in the past, but Hauser Izzo was Strauber Hauser, and now they're Hauser Izzo, so we need a new blanket resolution form so that they can continue to intervene on our behalf and keep us updated as usual. So that's all this is an updating of a blanket resolution to continue
Thank you, and on to our next agenda item, the discussion of delegate assembly resolutions.
Yes, in front of you, Board of Education, you have it's a report to the membership they call from ISB, and it's full of resolutions that have been offered from different school districts, different school boards, administration, etc. What I would ask of you is to read through all of these, all of this information. At our board meeting on November 9th, as a board, you will vote on what you can and or cannot support. We will have to identify a spokesperson for the school district, and on Saturday, that spokesperson for the school district will vote on behalf of Flossmoor School District 161 at the Tri-Conference. There's only one voting member per board that is allowed to do that. So there's interesting information. It ranges from finances all the way to curriculum. And at our next board meeting, I know it's a regular board meeting, but that is the time for us to have a healthy discussion on what you can support as a board and what you cannot. So in the past, I know there's been a couple things that we've had a lot of discussion about, but other than that, I believe that everything else seemed to be okay, and there's agreed on to ISB. So there will have to be an appointment of that, and that is up to the board president in doing the appointment of our representative for the school district. That should be done on November 9th. We did not have any that were brought forward. There's a lot of resolutions that I know about that I've given input to different people. And I believe Ms. LaBella has given input as well. Are there any questions on that? All right.
With that, we'll move to our next.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
You want this ready and coming on by board meeting 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, if you would read through it, that'd be the best thing to do.
For you,
We bring forward, if there's anything we'd like to discuss with that board meeting or prior to.
It's up to the board to have the discussion, and we can chime in with different things.
generally what we've done in the past, if there's something you've seen in here where you said, I disagree with this or I can't support this, you indicated, and as we go through, if we were going to do like a consent agenda and say we agree with all these, if you had one that you thought, no, I can't support this, you might pull that out and agree on what we agree upon as a whole, and then have a discussion about specific things. The goal is to, of course, have an understanding of what you are supporting and what you are not supporting, and it may turn out that you misunderstand one of the proposed items, and or it may be that as a new board member, you'd like to know a little bit more about it, but generally speaking, we do support it. So this is a great opportunity to understand what's really happening with discussions from different districts as well. It's just a great experience. But just put little notes on the side if you have a specific reason why you would like to talk about something or want to know more about.
Here's an example on page 29, 6.22, homeless student transportation. Okay. It says Illinois Association of School Boards shall support legislation confirming Illinois law with federal law specifically related to 105 LCS 45 and the requirement for school districts to transport homeless students beyond district boundaries. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions on that can be discussed. So those are the things you want to look at and discuss. This is your copy.
Mark, I like draw pictures.
Did you just go straight to that page number?
I did, it just popped right up.
It's totally. Any further questions, comments? Okay, the next agenda item is the IASB board retreat dates. Earlier, I think it was a few days ago. No, I'm sorry, it was last week. Mrs. Brino sent out some proposed dates. Some of you have gotten back, or that I had seen, or know about. But does anyone have?
Right now, all of these dates work, so the confirmation of what date, so I can get on the calendar and keep it there, the earlier the better. 'Cause
Okay.
Right now, they're.
All right, so all I would say is if you have,
The last two didn't work for me.
okay, if you have a conflict, just let Mrs. Prino know, and we will set this up soon. Because these do go fast.
May I ask, what's the topic of the board retreat? That we're setting these days for?
Well, this is part of our evaluation cycle that we haven't set an agenda.
What's the topic of the board retreat?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
We're having a board retreat
We're having board retreat.
to discuss the
Discuss.
topic, and that topic is,
The topic is how effective we think you are as a board.
so it's a board self-evaluation?
It's, yes. board
Okay, so the topic is,
self-evaluation.
I just didn't know what we're meeting on. So it's a board self-evaluation?
Yes, as part of the evaluation cycle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
did we go over the idea of board evaluation?
Yeah.
No, not agree.
Yeah.
This is a good thing.
We should have it. I mean, this is part of the recommended cycle.
And it's very, well,
Very low.
and we haven't had, we haven't done anything for us, right?
It's a great guy. Do we have any further comments or questions? Okay.
So we'll get the date by,
Well,
I think just as soon as we have some consensus, I think that we should really go for the earliest one possible that we all agree on.
Can I grab the dates and it can be taken care of here?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought the premise was, that the dates were put out there and then it was going to be discussed tonight as.
Did everyone here get a chance to respond?
I did, so I did. So whatever works for somebody right now, this is right.
all right. Merle, you had Wednesday and Thursday were not good? Those are, because you need full board participation.
Well, wait, just the last 2 days.
Last 2 days, yeah.
Yeah, just the last.
24th and 25th, right? Yeah.
So February 2.
We have the 10th, 17th, 18th, and 23rd thus far.
And that's not including these dates that you couldn't do?
She can't do the last two.
So 18th and 23rd is on, so it's either the 10th or the 17th?
No,
Yeah,
no.
give it the 24th and 25th.
We have
Oh,
open the
okay.
10th, the 17th, 18th, and 23rd. It's a 3-hour session.
Can everyone do the 10th? What day is that?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, can everyone do that?
Do we have a board meeting the Monday before? Do we? Okay, yeah, so we have a board meeting that Monday, so on that Wednesday would be another board meeting. The self-evaluation is the only presentation ISD gives that is an executive session. It will not be open to the public for a self-evaluation. I don't know if any of you knew that.
I can't do the time.
Okay, how about the 17th?
I'm going on.
How about, I'm sorry? Mrs. Odom? Okay, but Mrs. Marks, you can't do the 17th?
I'll go with something I'm wrong.
Okay, how about the 18th? Mrs. Odom? Can you all do the 18th?
Yeah.
You're so, where are you going back?
I'm working the 20th.
The 20th. Can you do the 23rd then?
Board meeting.
I'm working at work. I can track my work on the 23rd.
Okay, John, are you okay for the 23rd, as far as you know?
Yep.
Okay. Everyone else? Mrs. Odom, can you do the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay. questions? Okay, next on the agenda, we have revised policies. First reading.
Yeah, you have revised policies. These are policies that we already have. There's been some additions to them after some changes in the law, and the summaries are provided. This is the first reading for those. Are there any questions?
Are these all from press?
These are all from the press.
Any questions?
This happens 3 times a year. Board members, usually October, and then I think February, and then in June, and then once they're approved by the Board of Education, and we post them after each meeting, it's approved, we post them onto the website for the community. It would be November 9th. We always put the second reading in the last reading, or approval.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, on to the next agenda item, which is the National School Board Association Conference. I promised to give a short presentation. Mrs. Odom can now make it in, so I have taken the liberty of pulling some talking points from the NSBA website regarding the conference. Stephen, pass it. Okay, much in the same way that I think the Tri-Conference is very important. The sitting representative to the National School Board Conference in April, I think, is also very important. As local school board members, it's our responsibility to provide the best education possible for our students. One of the best ways we can work toward that end is by educating ourselves. And the management strategies learned through quality professional development in conferences should save our district, theoretically, money and lead to academic success. We expect our doctors, lawyers, and teachers to continue learning about the latest innovations, solutions, and research in their field is absolutely critical for school years to do the same. During these tough economic times, when we are faced with tough choices in our spending, a school leaders professional development conference may not appear to be a budgetary priority, but our children benefit from board members attending, and then using their knowledge to make well-informed decisions about school policy, finance, personnel, and curriculum. National School Board Association Annual Conference and State School Boards Association conferences present new strategies to manage school district finances and operations, showcase the latest technologies that aid student learning, demonstrate best practices gleaned from real-life experiences at other school districts, and allow board members to network with experts and peers. The exhibits also introduce many new products and services. I think that this is a great opportunity. I would not be in favor of sending more than one this year. I think that certainly Mrs. Odom has done a fantastic job with serving as our representative with our South Cook division, as well as I think that she has brought back a lot of valuable resources in the past. I think the challenge for us this year as a board is to utilize that what is brought back from these conferences in a more systematic way. And part of that, even in terms of the Tri-Conference, is to really set up an agenda of expectations ahead of time. I recently, last week, got a notice from the China Conference from IASB that has a new site, which I'll send out to all of you, where it allows you to better plan your attendance at the conference so that you're not all going to the exact same workshop. You kind of spread yourselves out, and we can come back together and more effectively use the information that we have.
I think we sent it.
Did they? I just saw it as sent it to me, so I'm glad you all got it as well.
As members, we all get to send it.
Fantastic.
So you don't have to worry about.
Okay, that's great.
not seeing it.
So, and certainly in the, as we get closer to our dates for the National School Board Conference, Mrs. Odom and I will sit down and look at the agenda, and we will come up with our own recommendations about workshops that Mrs. Odom would attend as a representative, and to certainly ask and open up to the board to find out what you would like to learn more about that is offered in terms of workshops at the national conference.
So that agenda is up right now. So Timmy, what have you seen on there that you think will be beneficial? Timmy?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said that you've looked at that agenda for the conference in Boston. What on there is like really piquing your interest?
Nothing specifically. I didn't focus in on that. I wanted to get you guys' input on what was important for our specific district so that I can then attend those sessions and bring back the information for those sessions.
I didn't see a bunch. What did you tell us, remind us again, what you brought back 2 years ago and what we did with your attendance at that meeting in New Orleans, right?
I do not recall.
You know what, and that's actually,
Well-
no, I'm actually going to follow up with that because she's actually going to.
I did a report that you probably consult the minutes from that.
Yeah, I looked. I saw that you had lunch with somebody.
Wait, hold on a second, this is
Yeah,
Mark's,
so
this is your question.
This is the part, because I think it was a couple years ago, so I was kind of newer on the board. So what she brought back, and I remember was really interesting, there were some things that were coming back specifically with the security systems, there were a couple other things, but they were really good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And we got excited, and we talked about it that night, and then we kind of let it go. So when we send this on this year, I would just really hope that we come up and say, okay, so we have an action plan, a documented action plan of what we're going to do, so we don't have the issues where we're looking back and saying, well, what did we go look at? What did he say was important? What did she say to us? Because again, I remember feeling jazzed, like, okay, this is a big piece, and it was around the time of the blue box, safety.
Right.
Blue point, right, so there's some stuff, but it was really good, but we could not, if you asked me, the outcomes about time, we spent our dollars and cents about a year, they went to do something, and then what were the action items that are taken out of it? Even if it's, we're not gonna take any, I think we really do need to, as a board, decide on what the action items are, the timeline, you know, whatever the follow-up might be, so that it is not this conversation, because I hate that I can't even speak to that, and I was newer, so it was really exciting to me what she was bringing back.
I agree, and I think that really, this is something that we've addressed as a systemic thing that, you know, Mrs. Odom brought back, I think a lot of fantastic ideas, but it just never really found its way into our board culture.
It was really, maybe one meeting and maybe one meeting
Yeah.
after we talked about it.
We did get the information, as Lisa just brought up, the blue light security system
Yep.
that I asked Craig to look into for, that was when Sandy Hook happened.
Right.
And they did all the presentations. I went to all of the different vendors who did presentations on that type of system that we have put into our elementary and junior high. But, and then we got to put down the stuff with, the food program, healthy eating program with Magic Johnson, which, Fran that gave us, Pam gave us the information that system will work in our school district because we don't have an actual kitchen in each one of the buildings that require a kitchen and not the prepaid packaging foods that we serve our children now, but we don't have the facilities to support that type of system. But anyway, I think the main thing is that it was a learning for all of us because, as you know, prior to me becoming the representative for the Illinois Association of School Boards, which then, gives me the obligation to serve as a delegate for the tri-conference and to represent the district at the national conference. I was the first person ever in the district for us to participate. School District 161 never had a presence at all. So this is new for all of us, and that was the very first national meeting that our school district ever participated in. So when Steve and I were talking about this conference, we thought, okay, well this time, let's get the board members, since some people felt as though the finding out how to have healthy eating for our children in our school district was not important, then let's have each person tell me, look at the agenda, tell me what they find to be important. We'll decide what's the best use of my time while I'm there so that I can report back on what you find more important to you than to what I found important for me, which was our children eating healthy and our children being secure in the building.
What do we have to have this feedback? Honestly, it's because I think learning is just great in general, but to be able to communicate back to our stakeholders, our taxpayers, our parents, that we are actually going to generate information and turn it into actionable items would be beneficial, because it's like, okay, we're still spending dollars, but what is it translating to? If it's just an education, and just making sure that we have that action plan at the end.
Yeah,
What do we need information? What do I need to look at this?
I would recommend, because this is in April, that there's not a huge rush. We have our tri-conference coming up, where we can see what we would like to focus on, and we can make some plans. So I think now would be a good time for us to really focus on what we would like to take away from the tri-conference. And certainly, I encourage, new board members, get excited about some of the workshops that are there, because my first year that I went, I was really excited about the great offerings that they had, and I remember talking to Lisa, like, oh, I wish Lisa was here to see this. And even if you go in pairs, it's great, because then at least you have someone you can talk to. And certainly, I saw a lot of our administration in some of these workshops as well, and there's just a lot to be gotten. But the tail end of this piece, and this is the after-conference piece, is we have to, we can't just let it all go and say, well, I had a great time, I'll see you next year. And moving forward into the national conference, I think we're going to have some probably similar themes. There's 7,000 school boards that are represented there, and I think that although we are 7,000 different ones, we certainly have a lot of similarities in terms of our concerns. And I think at that point, we should start building off of our tri-conference takeaways to set our agendas for the national conference. That's what I would recommend.
So what's the cost of attendance for one member?
Registration is $700.
So that's registration, so that's just the program. So then what's the total cost? Hotel room and airfare, right?
Yes.
So what's the total
And
cost
meals.
of sending someone?
Fran, do you remember offhand what that was?
Not from. Well, it would be, it would be different.
About $2,200.
It's different given the location. So $2,200, a chunk of change.
Yeah, that's the reason I think we have to make sure we're having something actionable come on.
I agree, yeah.
Well, why didn't we send anybody last year? We never talked about it. So it was, I'm just wondering, it was such a, to me, it was a great, you said New Orleans was a really great time.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You said New Orleans was a really great time, right?
I think she said you got a lot of time.
You had a great time in New Orleans, but why did no one go to?
Yeah, right. Christine, when you say New Orleans was a great time, you think that I went during Mardi Gras. No, it was not a great time.
No, the conference was a great conference. In the conference in New Orleans was a great conference. Okay, but nobody went to the conference in Minneapolis last year.
Yeah, we wasn't a conference in Minneapolis last year, we was a conference and I went to New Orleans and then now to Boston.
Wasn't there a conference
I
last year?
think previous year, I want to say
don't they?
was in Philadelphia last year? I think we.
But why didn't no
we
one
did-
go last year?
If I remember correctly, we were working on other, it just never materialized.
Nobody stepped up to the bar and took on the responsibility.
Okay.
Is this a conference that historically we've had some representation?
No, it's only recently, the last 4 years, 3 years?
No, 10 years on the woman's ever gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
The last 3, I've been on the person.
But you've only been one, right?
No, I've only been to one national, yeah,
Okay.
only one national conference.
So is it correct to assume that the pre-approval will come up for the next board meeting for the vote?
This is what I suggest, is that right now we have a, I forget what they call it. We're kind of in the select group that gets to register and to make hotel accommodations.
Everybody needs to do
I
this
know.
at deadline.
I know, it's perfect. And the Wednesday, it's going to open up to everybody. And so, rather than, and I've talked to Fester about this, and he says it's fine, that as long as there's a board consensus that, or, you know, that we should go forward with this. My recommendation is that the superintendent make some recommendation, or make a, some arrangements, or ask his staff to make arrangements for somebody to go in April, and of course, since Mrs. Owen is our rep, that should be her. And that what we can do is, 2 weeks from now, we can make this an agenda item to pre-approve this, and if we do, then we can certainly make it retroactive, and that would be fine.
I'm sorry.
But
She's
just,
our rep to what?
Judy is our rep with South Cook Division.
She didn't go to, wait, you're not still,
No, she's not an officer, but she's, in terms of who we send to these meetings, she's the person that we send.
no, wait, are those two different things?
Yeah, there's 2 different things. Who's the board? The executive board is sort of the same thing as our board. We make an individual election of who's our president, who's our vice president, and so forth. That doesn't mean that you're off the board because you didn't become the vice president or the president. I'm still on the board, I'm just not an executive board member.
Oh, okay.
So I guess, is it the inclination?
What's the cancellation cost if you direct the administration to reserve a spot at some cost and the board doesn't choose to pre-approve this at the next board meeting? Is there a cost to canceling that?
Cancellation is $125. However, I talked to the, someone at National today. They said they're going to get back to me tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and see if that's something that we can waive if, you know, we cancel in the next week or so, or 2 weeks.
Well, we were just looking at, so there's a rate if you do it by January 15th,
Right.
and then there's another rate if you register after that. So we've got some time.
What's the early bird rate, or the date?
7:40 by January 15th.
Oh, it's January.
7 January.
What's the early bird,
January 15th.
That's for registration, we're talking about the hotel, because what happened last time, we waited until the early bird deadline to register, and I ended up in a hotel that was like 50 miles away or something from the conference center. So then I had to pay for taxis every time we went back and forth to the hotel. And so that was additional cost to the district for taxis, even though, I mean, it was a really additional cost, because I never submitted so expensive, I paid for them myself, but it would have been an additional cost for, to get back and forth, trying to went back to the conference center. So that's the only reason why we're talking about doing the reservation for the hotel where the conference is now, so that we won't have that additional expense.
So that is $247, and for to be at the actual conference headquarters, and the prices are around $219 in the lower right, which is kind of far away, and it looks like about $239 to $247.
Plus, we don't want our representative to be 50 miles away from where the conference is. Right now, they have hotel rooms blocked out where they have free shuttle service. There's a few that are within walking distance, but right now those are all blocked out, or those are all taken up if you're on a waiting list.
So it's like first come, first served, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really the thing, once it opens up, then, you know, those hotel rooms go, and that's actually the big concern. You can actually register, you know, to go like that week before. The problem is, it's all the other accommodations that you have to look into. So if we're gonna send somebody.
Yeah, these are the ones we're looking at, so, because they're like,
Yeah. I mean, that first day, at the end of the day, they went like fast. All the hotels you could actually walk from were gone. And the ones that you get the shuttle bus from, those are filling up fast too. So my concern is I don't want our person to be stuck really far away. You know, Boston's a big city with a lot of hotels, but the further you get away, you know, you're really getting further away from the conference.
7 months out, I do not feel comfortable moving forward with this until we have a formal vote, that's a policy, that's in place, that's a precedent that's been set. I can't see hotels filling up between now and November 9th or whatever.
I'm looking at this, they're actually, that's why I'm looking at this now. You've gone to conferences, I've gone to conferences, so the ones that are closest already, so these really are filling up. I'm looking at the bottom of the list right now, so they are. Because, I mean, all of it's rated unavailable, all the way to the top. I mean, it's a decision we make, like I said, it's a precedent, but if there's something that you can cancel a hotel room, which you can, with no cost to anybody, I can't. Just help me understand, because I mean, I've booked hotel rooms, and you cancel them by next week, there's no cost, you just cancel them. So I think that it would be really an issue if we didn't allow for room people. But, I mean, that's just, I'm looking at catch. So all the ones that are kind of closer, it's just, I mean, it's a hotel room, I know we're talking about the conference fee that we might be able to waive, but as far as hotel rooms, I don't know if there's any harm to booking a hotel room and canceling the next week, you know?
Yeah, the only reason why, and again, the rooms are blocked out by, they're blocked out through the national conference. And so, you know, you have to register before you can get the special rate on the room. Did it say that there's a big difference? I mean, we're talking about $30.
Well, you have to register for the conference.
Yes,
before you
because.
You just can't call.
Right,
the hotel and give them.
Right, because otherwise people would just say, oh, I'm gonna go.
They ask you for your registration.
They take 10 rooms.
So you're looking for.
And Steve, moving forward, everybody's information, the last conference was in Nashville, 17.
Right, I remember that.
So what can we do tonight? This is not a voting night.
No.
As John said, there's questions, but is there?
Yeah, if we're gonna vote on actual money, we have to do that at next board meeting. Okay, however, and I ran this by Mr. Fester, he said there's no problem with us as a board showing a majority where we say, you know, you give some direction to the superintendent to have his staff go ahead and make those accommodations. And then just make it retroactive at the next regular board meeting. I mean, if you're uncomfortable with it, you're uncomfortable with it. You know, certainly vote no or indicate no. But from, you know, our board attorney's point of view, we certainly can go that route. It shouldn't be a problem. And on a practical level, I think we should do this ASAP. Looking back self-critically, we should have done this last month or 2 weeks ago, but we didn't. We were worried about other stuff, and it got pushed. So here we are. But anyway, that's my recommendation. So if the rest of the board, the majority of the board is okay with that, I say give direction to Mr. Dusser to ask his staff to make accommodations.
This will be for Craig as well, right?
No. We also have issues. Are you driving, Tammy?
Timmy, you're not driving, are you?
Oh, no, I'm not driving in Walton.
Plus miles.
Like, I'm talking about Blake.
I think once you're in the city, it's a foot city, so.
Well, we on Southwest. I totally understand. I do this. Great, so just to clarify, so we can't vote tonight?
We're not voting for, we're going to approve, we're going to spend this money. We are either showing an indication by majority what direction we want to give the superintendent.
So,
We actually don't, in terms of the bill, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't the budget anyway, right? At some point, we did budget for this?
not for this specific thing, we budgeted for educational costs, we're not specified. Doesn't say that just a line item. This isn't a specific line in the budget, no.
Staff, the rest of the board.
Mostly, I think.
Also, there was board development as well.
Right. But it's
That
not
20,000 includes board professional development?
It's a different one.
What was that? We had this discussion in the room about.
June 22nd?
We budgeted this.
Yes.
Right.
We
And,
budgeted
yeah.
this. Steve,
There was a
we
line
budgeted
of-
this thing. We added a 5% increase.
Okay, that's what it was.
So, if Mrs. Odom is unable to fulfill her responsibilities, is the runner-up then able to take her place, or is the registration specific to an individual?
No.
I just worry, Timmy, because I know you've got, sometimes it's a challenge, and I would hate to see you not be able to attend.
Actually, I looked into that, it's entirely transferable.
Awesome.
So if it comes down to the day before, somebody gets violently ill,
Is that
or
your-
if something happens,
So it's just.
you know.
So we're saying, we're giving
Just
the
give us
green light
Yeah,
so that we can
proceed.
hold a place,
Mhm.
but we will discuss and vote on this later.
Yes, that is correct.
But the potential unintended consequence of that is we could lose $100 and something if he's not able to waive the fee, right? If we don't approve.
That is
Just want to
correct.
approve it, right?
Yeah. Potentially.
Okay, I just
Because I'm
want to
still,
make sure. Okay.
But then if we don't give the green light, so the risk is losing $125. But on the other side is we don't give a green light, but we approve this later and
Higher cost, higher.
Yeah.
then it could be more than $2,200 or whatever.
yeah, I think it's and you're going to have your representative much further away from the conference. You're creating a commute.
Higher tax costs.
So what?
You're creating a commute with a conference.
So how do you
Okay, Mr. Simmons, you indicated you're not supportive.
I'm not supportive of the process itself.
Okay,
It's regardless of the dollar amount we might put at risk, to give direction through a formal vote or otherwise to our administration to incur expenses outside of a regular board meeting is not correct. It's not proper. I don't support the whole process.
okay, Mrs. Marks?
I'm concerned, well, I'm concerned with the process that, yeah, I'm concerned with the process, I can't support any of this, you know.
Okay, let me just get, I just want to be clear that it's okay for us to get the green light and approve, because you're right, we will be incurring expenses.
That was the conversation I had today with Mr. Fester, is what his thought was on this. He said he didn't see any reason from his point of view as board attorney why this would be a problem. As long as we vote next time and where it's official, and we make it retroactive, it's perfectly fine. From his perspective.
Any experience?
No, I have no experience in this, but that's, I have to defer to, I mean, that's why we have board attorney who set ambiguities, and I understand those pieces of it, but if we don't say, okay, go ahead and do this right now, and then we can go, because we've got a lot of things hanging out here. I have no problem saying, okay, please go ahead and do that, but I honestly don't want to be out of line with what we're supposed to do from a policy standpoint, but if he's comfortable with that, I mean, I have no issue at all with the intention of what we're trying to do.
Is that good?
Because I understand about booking these conferences and hotels, and this is what I do every day for you. I think we should give some type of indication of yes, or proceeding with it. Else we're gonna incur expenses on the back end, that could be higher tax costs or whatever. So I think we should avoid
Okay. Mrs. Swift.
I could say that if you don't, that I paid $120 just in transportation to get back and forth from the airport, because we weren't at the host facility, so I had to do a separate, limiting service, or what do you call that, we were in a, and you had to pay individual, for each individual person had to pay the ride in this bus. And that was not, because it wasn't a host hotel, we didn't have a hotel shuttle to take us back and forth. So that's $120 all by itself, and I was in New Orleans, so I don't know what it is in Boston, to take you back and forth to the airport.
So I'm actually, I have no problems with the conference itself and the process of us making this a very inclusive process to help figure out what makes sense. What I'm not comfortable with doing is agreeing to incur expenses before we actually, but there's just something I don't want this to set a precedent and to give a green light to incur expenses. What happens next week if we actually do vote and the vote is not passed?
Then we're out $125.
Which is a current expense, so you are setting precedent for potentially on off times and rate to money before we vote.
That's what we are essentially doing. We are agreeing.
So you open the door to doing this for other things, which could be more, which is a problem. But we have to just understand, if we wait and then we do this a week later, then all those things that we said were not gonna happen, could potentially happen, which is further away, hotels not happening, air fights, if they, which they're actually really cheap right now, we better take 2 flights and, no. But, if we're willing to take that risk, I'm not sure we're staying. Have we done anything like this in the past, anything like that?
Not that I know of. Jimmy, do you think of anything?
No, I've only gone one time.
No, not necessarily, no, we're talking about a process, it's not about the conference. It's, have we ever kind of said to the administration, hey, yep, go ahead, next week we'll vote officially, but we're kind of potentially having some money on the table.
The historical precedent has been the president has said, make arrangements for our representative to go to nationals.
Right, so then that was the second question, why are we voting on something that I don't remember voting on before? I thought we just, that's what we.
Well, because.
That's exactly what I'm like, this is never,
Well, seriously, that's what I'm asking, you're posing it to us like it's a, okay, we gotta vote on this, but then in the past, if you sent somebody to a conference, if we went to a conference, I don't think we voted on it. I delegated to somebody and you all took care of it.
Yeah. The board didn't know Tammy was attending until after she attended.
We already-
It was in the process of attending.
No,
So it's not discussing that.
Actually, that's next.
So we've now spent more time discussing hotel rooms and airfare than we have the value of attending this conference. Mr. Paredes, who brought forward talking points that are on the website, and Mrs. Oda would like to attend, brought us absolutely no background, written background or presentation of why this attendance is important to the board, to the district. May I finish, Timmy, please? I'm sorry, I know you can't see me, but when I'm done, I'll let you know. There was no proposal made about why this should be attended. That's what we should be discussing, not our time spent.
Read the information that the National School Board Association sends you.
I do. I did.
Okay. So
I can tell you what's on the agenda for the meeting. I asked you and Mr. Paredes if you're going to suggest you attend these, then you share with us why and what the benefit is.
Why can't you use your own brain to figure out what the value of a conference is with that type of information that's being offered?
I can, and that's exactly what I did, Timmy. Mrs. Odom, I did use my brain to figure out what the value of that was. That's why I can't support it.
Don't bother me about my brain.
Okay, let's,
Use your brain.
Thank you.
Based on your own.
Thank you, and I am only using mine.
let's
Thank you.
end the conversation on our brains and get back to the conference. To answer your question, sometime in the spring, the precedent changed from the last president, and I suggest it would be a lot easier if things like this, which have historically been done by the president, where the president just appoints somebody, you go, or finds out who would be interested in going, or makes recommendations, and then from there, if the majority of the board said, I completely disagree with this, and they made it an agenda item to vote on it, expressing that in a regular board meeting, that would be fine. But this has really only sort of popped up as, I think, is an inefficient process to some degree. But this is something that traditionally the board president did, like picking somebody who would be on a committee or some other like thing in representing the district.
Craig, may I ask, just in your experience in working with past presidents, as you work with two past presidents now, did those past presidents just approach somebody for a conference that they thought was good for the goal, or to their board goal?
There was a request to go when I first arrived to the answer was no by the board president.
But was it his decision, I'm asking you, unilaterally, yes, go, or no, go, or was it a board decision? Whatever that decision was.
Yeah, it was that decision, and then the next time that it came up, there was discussion about it, and there was a yes
From the president.
from the last
So
one.
again, unilaterally, the president made that decision.
And then
So-
there was an email that was sent out from an opinion from our attorney last spring, and it had a discussion about the pre-approval process that was mentioned in the policy.
Right.
And to be on the safe side, it should be brought forward to the Board of Education for approval.
Okay.
So I've been on it.
So, okay, I'm just, because we are spending an awful lot of time on this, and it was, I have zero issues with the point of this conference, I see values in the conference, I bring value in bringing back information and making it actual item. So it's just about the process piece of it, because I don't remember it coming forward, that's all I'm asking. Yeah.
I would ask a question, what are the pros and cons of waiting until the next meeting? It's just the hotels?
It's just the hotels and the accommodations.
Yeah.
And, airfare may go up or down. 2 weeks.
While we may, if I may say this, in what I do every day for the doctors, when they're booking these kind of conferences, you have to register, then you have to do those hotels. What we may be risking incurring the cost of $125 up front, whereas we may end up doubling that on the back for taxi rides, from conferences to airports to this, to that, to the other. Because generally the prime hotels have the shuttles and all the amenities to accommodate this conference. So even though we don't want to set a precedent, we're talking about incurring costs. $125 to double and possibly, who knows, maybe triple, depending on, unless somebody knows how far the furthest hotel is away from the conference. or incur $240, $260 on the back end for taxes. I think it's marvelous if we could hold it and we can pay for registration. So, we know that we value the conference, we know we want somebody to go, and somebody is going to go, it's transferable. I mean, the question came up if Timmy for some reason could not go, if it's transferable. I just don't see what the issue is. I think people would be more angry later to know that we could have avoided doubling and tripling the cost on the back end.
Well, where are we? I mean,
You're looking for majority, correct?
yeah, so we have 2 no's, we have 2 yes, we have a yes, no, a no, no, or yes, yes. What are we doing?
Okay, in order to evolve, before they just go on that protocol, we call a short special board meeting just to kind of handle this and take care of it. I understand, I'm not trying to make more meetings because Lord knows I want, but I'm going to do this.
Earliest would be Thursday.
Huh?
I think earliest would be Thursday, right? Or could we do it Wednesday? Is that possible? It's gonna be 40 hours, right? So earliest would be Thursday.
Not available.
That would be. The other thing we could do, I mean, you could theoretically book a non-blocked out room if they have one available, and just lose, what is it, an extra $30 off, $40 off? I mean, what are we talking about? You know, if you get a room independently of the registration discount. I mean,
That's an option. They may book a room. There's an option. It's only a different thing. And you don't have to worry about voting on something that loses. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then, you know, certainly any one person could reserve a room, and then it'd be reimbursed, if that's something that we want to do.
How do we know there are any non-locked out rooms? Usually when conferences come, they usually lock out
I have no idea.
hotels.
There's 7,000 school boards that are attending this,
Right,
so.
they usually lock them
that's-
out when the big conferences come. You may be talking about a hotel out further out.
Well, they have the live listed on the website.
Okay. So but you all are the one who said you saw that a lot of them were becoming unavailable. That was the block.
We need action.
Okay,
Right.
what, you guys want to have a special board meeting on this on Friday, or what? Here's my prediction. If we don't do this now, you know, we might as well just wait 2 weeks. And you're probably going to lose a lot of hotel options. That's what I predict is going to happen. Because, yeah, because once Wednesday comes, there's a whole wave of people who are going to be booking rooms. This is, I mean, you know, I understand what you mean by setting precedent. I mean, I think precedent really happens when you start getting to a pattern of behavior as opposed to, you know, like, I don't know. I don't have a problem with this. So I don't think that this is something that's that big of a deal. I don't think we're talking about something that's potentially $125. It may be $0. I could call tomorrow morning, you know, try to hear from the guy from Nationals, you know, to say, look, can you give us a break for 2 weeks, you know, so we can get this through. I mean, where are we? What's?
Give us a break and hold a room.
Well, just, you know, if we cancel in the next 2 weeks, you won't charge us the administrative fee.
What are you looking for from us right now?
I guess ultimately, just one way or the other, you know, are we gonna give direction tonight, or are we gonna wait 2 weeks? What do we want to do?
I'm in support of the conference, I'm just not in support of incurring expenses before we actually vote.
Okay.
There is a way to vote. I mean, would it be different, would there be a difference if it was instead of $125, $1,000? Right, I mean, so to me, a precedent is not just about setting a pattern, you do it once, and then you can always go back. We can always point to, well, we did it this way the first time. So I just want to set the tone of how we start to review and approve these things, and just incurring expenses on anything, not just a conference, on anything, before we actually get to vote as a board. I just don't, if we could do it without incurring expenses, or even if we knew that it was 100% refundable, I'd be more comfortable than that. But I just don't feel comfortable incurring expenses. Because we are essentially voting right now. We're giving a green light, we're going member by member saying yes or no. I mean, that's voting.
All right, well, I mean, do you guys want to, it sounds to me like you're not comfortable with this, and you want to push
There's
this
no money,
off.
it's money attached to it.
That's fine.
But, I mean, she can go ahead and look around. Just if you want to look around, so we have it. Because the issue is a room.
Well, how much is it?
339.
Okay, and that's close.
50.
So look around. I mean, and if he comes back tomorrow and says there's no cost to it, then you have no issue. That is, that's the money.
Okay. Timmy, did you hear that? And I don't know how comfortable, Timmy? Okay, so, my suggestion then would be to tell Mrs. Odom if she would like to book a room in the meantime before we find out if there's a fee that can be waived, or we wait 2 weeks, then that's what we do. But at that point, if she's paying for a room that costs a little bit more than the blocked out time, then that's something that we would discuss then as well. You okay with that?
So we're going to go towards the difference?
Yeah.
The discussion will be?
So
But I
to-
think we're still talking about money.
Right.
We're still talking about making decisions that have to do with money.
I understand, I don't want to split hairs here.
Yeah, no, I mean, no issues with her going to this conference at all.
Okay, but then, so 2 weeks from now, we'll talk about that as an agenda item we will vote on? Yes? Yes? We're all good on that?
Good at one.
2 weeks from now, we'll make this an agenda item and actually vote on it. Okay, then I'm fine with that. Mrs. Odom? We'll get back to you. Okay, with that,
She's still there.
Well, on this check.
I don't think so. I think the screen would want.
We will.
Well, anyway. Okay, so moving on, we will now go into executive session to discuss matters related to personnel, 5 ILCS 120/2 C1. Be back out and say, I'm thinking